Welcome to the channel, guys. It's Weedle, and today I'm going to go over the tanks that I would most like to see get buffed in 2025. Now, over the last year and a half, I would say Wargaming has been going through. They started off just nerfing some of the more, let's just call them, they're overpowered. The Chieftain, the 90, the Super Conch even got a little bit of a DPM nerf, which honestly I think it deserved. Still a really good tank. But then they went through and they started buffing tanks that needed a little love. The Bat Chat, the Panzerkampf 7, even the Patton, along with some of the lower tiers in those tech trees. So, keeping with that theme, I'm going to go over some tanks that I'd like to see get buffed in 2025. And starting off the list, we have the Concept 5. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of an oddball view on this tank. I actually rather enjoy it. As a sniper, it actually does its job really well. The problem is, between it and the Leopard 1, there's a big difference. The Leopard 1 can defend itself, it can make plays, it can actually fight back when pressed. This tank can't do that. Its only thing it can do is stay around the edges of the map. It's not slow, but it's fast enough to move around the edges of the map and snipe, and that's all it can really do. And it does that job quite well, but the problem is tanks need to be able to do more than that. And if you're trying to consider, compare this thing to a K91 or a Vickers or a Leopard, it just falls significantly short. And the main reason is DPM. It just does not have enough DPM. I mean, even with the gun rammer and vents, it gets up to about 2,900. That just doesn't cut it in 2025 or even 2024. But I think this tank deserves a buff. One, the tank is beautiful to look at. I mean, it's just someone at Wargaming put a lot of love in this tank. The gun, like when you fire, you see the barrel recoil. The recoil of the gun also rocks the tank. It's got a lot of cool features, and it's got the bones, I think, to be a community favorite. I hope Wargaming gives this thing a lot of good, some love. Give it some more DPM. If they want to make it competitive, it would need more concealment. And honestly, better traverse speed would be nice, but at a minimum, this thing needs more DPM. So that's what I would be looking for it to have in 2025. All right, next up, we have the Type 71 Heavy. Now, when this tank entered the game, or was about to enter the game, there was a belief that it might actually be the next hold down monster tank with 12 degrees gun depression, good DPM, fairly accurate gun, at least when the gun was cold. But it turned out this is probably the worst tier 10 in the game. Biggest culprit fit, it doesn't have enough armor in the front hole and the side hole, which basically makes this thing almost unplayable on a lot of maps, in my opinion. It just gets pushed. It doesn't have like the alpha damage to, make tanks back up, even with the good DPM. So what does this thing need? Well, at a bare minimum, to make this tank playable, it has to have more frontal and side armor in the hull, particularly. Now, to be competitive, it would also need to be faster. I also believe that a little bit of modeling needs to be done around the cupola on this one, as it's just incredibly weak, and it gets heavily punished. But I mean, honestly, you could play around that if it just had more armor and was faster. So like I said, Wargaming just has to decide, do you want it to be playable or do you want it to be competitive? And if they want it to be competitive, they're going to have to do a little bit more work. But if they just want it to be playable, buff the whole armor, and I think it would be fine. Next up, I have the IS-4. Now, I know what someone's saying. No, the IS-4 is good. I agree with you. This is actually a really good tank, and I'm surprised I don't see it more often in the queue. I recently just started playing it, maybe like a week or two ago. Just every now and then, just throwing in a few matches, and I've had some really good games in this tank. But here's the thing I have with this tank. It just needs more ammo. That's it. It doesn't need anything else. The tank is actually pretty good. It just needs ammo. Like, I feel like Oliver Twist out here going, please, sir, may I have some more ammo? That's all I need. Like 10 rounds, 15 rounds would be amazing. Then I could actually, blind shot a bush or something, and then I don't run battles like this one where I almost run out of ammo, and after the battle I'm like questioning, should I take the chance that I'll miss this shot, or do I need to save it so I can defend myself? So yeah, just give me like 10 rounds. 15 would be awesome. I think this thing's a great tank. If you haven't played it much, you should give it a try. It's a very fun tank. Next up, we have the Sultan of Swat, the KV-5. Now, supposedly, the KV-5 is on Wargaming's buff list. Now, when you start hearing tanks are going to get buffed, it's best not to get too excited. There was rumors of the Bat Chat getting buffed almost a year, maybe more, before it was actually buffed. So who knows what's down the road for this tank, but I do believe it could use a buff. I'm just not sure what you would buff on it. The only thing that I can really think of is the mobility. Make it a little bit faster, give it a little bit better turret traverse, and a little bit better engine power, and maybe some ground resistances too. And just make it go a little faster to get around the battlefield. And that would probably be all that it would need. It's not awful. It's got armor. The problem is, the armor's got fewer curves than a freshly printed dollar bill. It just doesn't bounce anything, especially heat rounds. It's a premium. You're going to spam premium at it because otherwise you can't pin it. It's just kind of an awkward tank like that. But yeah, I would like to see this thing buffed. I think the concept of it is pretty good. And next up, we have a tank that is already a community favorite in my mind, anyways. The Rhinoceronte, or for short, we'll just call it the Rhino. Now, this tank scares me that it needs a buff, and also you have to be very careful with buffing it. Why you have to be careful with buffing it? Well, everything about this tank is actually quite nice, except for one thing. It's got good mobility. It's got pretty good gun handling, pretty good penetration, reasonably good armor. I'm not going to sit here and say it's got god tier armor, but yes, this tank will bounce things. The only downside this tank has is DPM, which means if you're buffing this tank, the only thing that makes sense to buff is the DPM. However, for you guys that have been playing for a while, you probably remember when World of Tanks was called World of Autoloaders. And why? That's because the autoloaders were just dominating the battlefield, and it was just, they had such high DPM. This thing could easily resort back to that kind of gameplay where everything's basically an autoloader. I don't want that. So what does this thing need? Well, I think at a minimum, it probably needs, I'm not going to say another shot a minute, but I feel like if it had like 2400 DPM, it would probably be in a really good state. And I say that just because the amount of burst damage that you can give out in this tank, thinking 3-second interclip reload with 490 alpha, it's a lot of damage you can pump into somebody in, essentially 6 seconds. You can dump 1500 damage into someone. That's really hard to recover. Now, you're going to have a long reload for that, but, their tank is essentially crippled. So, yes, I would like to see this thing buffed a little bit. I think it is a very fun tank to play as is. So it doesn't need that enjoyment factor going into it. This is a very enjoyable tank. It's got good alpha, good gun. It just needs DPM. And I think if more tanks would cautiously raise the DPM on this tank and not make it overpowered, I believe this would be a nice addition, a nice buff that the World of Tanks community would appreciate. So there you go, Wargaming. Give the Rhino a little bit of love, and let us have our fun. Okay, last on my list, I have the M5Y, commonly referred to as the Mivy. Now, when this thing came in the game, everyone thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be on a ridgeline. There's nothing you're going to be able to pin. It's going to be completely broken. And it turned out that it wasn't really the case, but, you have to watch how the turret's angled and a lot of different things that go into play with this one. But actually, when thinking about what you could do to this tank to actually make it pretty good, I came up with a really, really simple solution. On the 120mm gun, just replace that 300mm heat pen round with an AP round. And all of a sudden, I think this tank is pretty decent. It's not going to be broken, but it will be good. I think it would actually be considered a good tank in the random queue. I don't think this would become a Clan Wars tank with that change, but it would be in a much better place, and it would give it something a little bit more unique, kind of like the M4 a little bit. It would be very similar to it, I believe, in a good position, not overpowered, and yeah, I think that would be an excellent thing that Wargaming could do to fix this tank. But that's it for my list. I would love to read your comments below on some tanks that you would like to see buffed in 2025, and if you like the tanks I recommended and what I'd like to see done with them. So cheers, guys, and good luck tanking.